the prosecution's star witness taking the stand, but it was more than that. It was how Cassie took that stand. You could hear a pin drop when those doors opened, and a visibly pregnant Cassie Ventura walking past a man she had not seen in 6.5 years, a man she says violently abused her for a decade, a man the prosecution said trafficked her. Well, she sat across from him, placed her overcoat behind her, turning her body slightly toward the jury, rubbing her pregnant belly throughout her testimony. Diddy, well, he was more fidgety than he was the day before. He was passing notes. He pushed himself away from the defense table and largely sat like that. They never seemed to make eye contact with one another, not even after she was crying about having loved him once and planning and participating in these freak-off sex parties because she feared him and she wanted to make him happy, but feeling worthless, feeling disgusting because she didn't want to do it. Now, with each moment, the testimony became more and more graphic. Her delivery, though, it never changed. It was matter of fact, steady, calm. At times, she was even critical of herself, walking us all through how a 10-album record deal came over a 10-year period of abuse and sexual humiliation. And once you hear Cassie's testimony, you'll understand why the courtroom was so tense. She described the freak-offs in lurid detail. She testified about Diddy, who she called Sean, choreographing it all. And she explained a pattern of physical abuse that she could not escape. Cassie told the jury about one freak-off at a hotel where Diddy told her to get into an inflatable pool filled with warm baby oil. The prosecutor asked, "What concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil?" Cassie responded, quote, that, amongst other things, just his temper. If that is something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that what was going to happen. There wasn't another way around it. Now, Cassie claims that Diddy controlled everything about her life and his staff helped him do it. She also says all aspects of the freak-offs went through Diddy for approval, from how he directed her to finding escorts, at times from Craigslist, to her appearance and what she wore, and even what happened during the encounters with the other men. She testified, quote, every freak-off was like directed by Sean, like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such. Cassie says the freak-offs made her feel disgusting, humiliated. She says she took all kinds of drugs to numb herself and disassociate. And she testified Diddy frequently got physically abusive. One of those times was during a 2016 incident at a California hotel. This video. Cassie says she was in a freak-off with Diddy and an escort just a couple of days before her first big movie premiere. And she claims Diddy gave her a black eye, and all she could think about was getting out of there safely. So she ran out while Diddy was in the shower, she says. The prosecutor asked, quote, how many times had Sean thrown you to the ground like that before? Cassie responded, too many to count. I don't know. Cassie was also asked if there were occasions when she tried to fight back, when he would hit her. She said, no. Cassie's testimony, it's far from over. She'll be back on that stand tomorrow. And her lawyer, though, says she's feeling good after today.
How do you feel after today?
It's not for me to decide how we feel. It's up to the jury. But we're very confident.
How's Cassie doing after it all? How is she feeling? I know it must have been a lot to kind of recount all the experiences.
It was a long day. I'm just super proud of her.
Let's start off with CNN's Kara Scannell, who has been covering this case from the very beginning, and she was in the courtroom today, virtually a front row seat. Kara, tell me, how did the testimony come in? How were these freak-offs orchestrated?
So Cassie kind of walked the jury through what her role was in the freak-offs and how she said that Combs had choreographed them. He was the director in charge. And what she described was that these freak-offs lasted from 36 to 72 hours. The longest one, she said, lasted 4 days. And through that period, she said her role had evolved from initially Combs setting up the first one to then it becoming essentially her job. These freak offs, she said, were occurring weekly. And what she was responsible for was finding these escorts, using Craigslist, some of these other escort services, helping them travel to certain locations from Miami to Ibiza, to New York, to LA, to Las Vegas. And that she worked with Combs's business travel people in order to move people around, saying that they would project that they were potential employers and getting them to move. But she said that he had everything to do with what she was wearing. She said she would buy outfits from sex shops and see which one he wanted her to wear. And then inside the actual hotel rooms, their apartments where the freak-offs took place, she said that Combs was in charge of lighting. It began with candles. It then moved to studio lighting, that he was directing how they moved from each action of each sexual act in these freak-offs, and even the amount of baby oil that they were wearing. She said that he wanted them to be glistening, and so he would often encourage them to put on more baby oil. And then the drug use. Part of that testimony, she said, was that she had engaged and used numerous drugs, including ecstasy, GHB, ketamine, cocaine, marijuana. And the prosecution showed text messages where before a freak-off, she is texting Combs asking, which colored pill do I take from your Louis Vuitton med bag? And he directed her which one to take.
It was astonishing to have all of this come in and the tempo with which she spoke, the jury in this room leaning in at times to hear more information. She also described what she feared most about defying him.
Right. I mean, she walked through what the range of these fears were, from physical to just if she upset him, he would take away her phone, her car, limit her access to her apartment. Sometimes that was done by him, sometimes through members of his staff, some of his security team. She also was testifying that, these physical threats. One thing that stood out to me that she said was if she made the wrong face, the next thing I knew I was getting hit in the face. And she said he controlled almost every aspect of her life. He gave her essentially busy work, a to-do list, so he would know what she was doing at all times. If he couldn't reach her, he was incessantly texting her until someone went and checked to see where she was. She also said that he controlled her appearance. Sometimes he didn't like her hair. He wanted her to dress sexy, sometimes a tomboy. He wanted her nails to be white, she testified, especially during the freak-offs. And one thing that she said she was concerned about was blackmail, because a lot of these freak-offs were recorded, and the big concern was hers that they could end up in the internet if somehow she did something to upset him.
We're just a half day into this testimony, the direct. There's so much more. And the jury was shown that now infamous 2016 hotel surveillance video for now, what, a fifth or more time today? Why do you think the prosecution continues to show this video, sometimes stopping it and showing parts?
Yeah, they've been showing this at least 5 times by my account and going kind of moment by moment. And I think what they're trying to do here is they've charged Combs with sex trafficking by force and coercion. And part of that force is physical violence and the threat of physical violence. I mean, this is why Combs's lawyer has called this probably the most important piece of evidence in this whole trial, because that is how the prosecution will want to show the jury that there was violence, that it was real. You can't distinguish this. They're not denying this happened. What Combs' lawyers is trying to tell the jury, though, that this is not evidence of sex trafficking. It's evidence of domestic violence, which he owns, but they're saying it is a very different thing than what he's been charged with.
I want to start with you, Stacey, because her testimony, did it prove there was a criminal enterprise? That's what they got to prove for RICO.
Right. So I look at her testimony today as domestic violence on steroids. The prosecution is trying to show that there was coercion and that he used his business enterprise to engage in coercing women to fulfill his sexual desires. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I understand there are all kinds of criminal activities being alleged here. But the racketeering and the sex trafficking charges, I'm not sure that Cassie made that out today.
It's
Now,
only
there may
day
be
2,
more.
though,
It's
right?
only
I
day
mean,
2.
and you're looking
And
at
they're
this,
trying
Misty,
for it.
it's day 2.
Yeah.
So the jury, and this is, by the way, an 8 to 10 week trial.
Yeah.
They have a lot to show, but they called her almost first. She's getting ready to give birth probably in a matter of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she's the most critical witness, and there's a reason for that, because yes, the case is not made yet, but she's laid the foundation for establishing those charges for the prosecution. And here's how. With respect to sex trafficking, we heard about the power dynamic, that he was always in control. We heard about stomping, kicking, hitting. All of these physical acts to get her to comply, psychological abuse, blackmail. That's where we get our forced fraud and coercion. And as far as RICO, she kind of put the O in organization in RICO by naming individuals who were in his sphere and were doing his bidding and talking about what would be the predicate underlying crimes.
But more
drugs,
than that,
guns,
they
prostitution.
showed the pictures. They actually tried to put a face to what they were calling the enterprise. Remember, in the opening statements, they were saying it was the inner circle, the bodyguards, trusted assistants. They actually went through and showed pictures to the jury today of various bodyguards trying, I guess we were talking about, to establish the enterprise. But then there was this moment, Jeremy, where she actually said on the stand, eventually it became a job for me. She's talking about planning these freak-offs. Eventually it became a job for me to where I knew that if that is something that he wanted to do, I had the contacts to set it up and get a hotel room and all of that. And sometimes she'd even give deposits on her own personal credit card. So is she part of the enterprise or the victim of it?
Well, the defense is going to try to make her out to be part of this. She's not a victim. She's there willfully. She's getting this 10 contract or 10 record deal. This is what she's doing. And the prosecution in return is going to say, you know, you can white knuckle someone's neck with control. You can white knuckle their soul with control. And that's the control he had over her at all times.